Next curve.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this Next Curve Rethink podcast episode where we break down the latest tech and industry events and happenings into the insights that matter. And I'm Leonard Lee, executive analyst at Next Curve. And in this Silicon Futures episode, we'll be talking about what's happening in the month of February. But in this segment, we're gonna be focusing probably overly on NVIDIA. They just had this call, so
yeah, we just got off the call. So
yeah, so as always, I'm joined by the always accelerated Mr. Karl Freund of Cambrian-AI.
You'll say the artificial, always artificial.
No, that's kind of me.
That would be rude. That would be.
Yeah, I'm not that bad. Yeah, unfortunately, our friend Jim McGregor of Tirius Research isn't able to join us, at least for this segment, but he'll join us tomorrow, and we're going to stitch all of this together to give you perspective on the month of February, which has really turned out to be quite another insane month. But, before we get started, please remember to like and share, react, and comment on this episode, and also subscribe here on YouTube and on Buzzsprout to listen to us on your favorite podcast platform. Opinions and statements by my guests are their own and don't reflect mine or those of Next Curve, and we're doing this to provide an open forum for discussion and debate on all things related to AI, just semiconductors in general, but we do a lot of AI on this because this is really what Karl loves to talk about. So, Karl, yeah, how are you?
I'm doing good, thanks.
Really?
Little sunburn. Yeah.
That is weird. Because usually sunburns don't really go well with colds, right?
Yeah, I got sunburn and a cold. I think the reds from the sunburn. The nose probably just been drinking too much alcohol in Mexico last week.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's always a price to pay. There's a Zuma something. Yeah. Variation of Montezuma's revenge, but but yeah, well,
yeah. So let's dive into it.
We just got off.
Dive into it. I think clearly all the fuss and radical prognostications about DeepSeek certainly haven't come to pass yet. I don't think they will. I still think that cheaper is good, and if you can build your AI model cheaper, you'll build more AI models. And so, NVIDIA's revenue didn't show any kind of slowdown whatsoever. Interestingly, you contrast that with AMD, and I think the gap is widening. I'm coming quickly to the opinion, at least for the next year. I can't see anything past a year, but for the next year, I think NVIDIA's leadership is not only solid but is improving against its commercial silicon vendor competitors. They're probably a little more worried about Google, but that's just one cloud. It's just one cloud.
Yeah.
So, NVIDIA's on all clouds, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And of course, the same would be true for Trainium 2, which is actually looking pretty good. But again, that's only on AWS. But all in all, really good. They increased revenue. They're going up to $44 billion next quarter.
43.
43. I got it wrong.
Yeah,
I bet you they hit 44. What do you think?
You're just trying to round it up.
You think Jensen's just going to stick to got the price? Stop selling. We're done. We're made the number now. Not going to happen. Yeah. So 43 billion. It's pretty damn good. And the growth rates obviously coming down, but still, you compare it year over year, and their growth is phenomenal. They're up tremendously.
Yeah, almost
7 or 8.
Yeah,
78%.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. So anyway, I think Jensen made some really interesting comments on his call. First of all, he says Blackwell is in full production and will fully ramp in the next 3 quarters. He also made some comments that I thought were interesting about the impact of AI on software development and the impact of AI on software in general.
Yeah.
And if he's right, and I haven't seen him be wrong for about 7 years, that would imply that every computer's got to run AI, whether it's through an NPU on a CPU or on an attached accelerator. We'll find out. I think the thing I'm looking forward to, it may not happen next earnings, but this whole, and we talked about last time too, right? The whole idea of he's going to build the best AI PC on the planet. Called Bridges.
Yeah.
And if he's right about software, that would imply that his AI PC could do quite well.
Yeah. We'll see how it's positioned further downstream because it is really a workstation, right? I mean, that really
it's a workstation. It's not a PC. $3,000. That's a low end workstation, really.
Yeah,
that's a low end workstation,
right? Which is oddly incredibly small.
It's the size of a deck of cards.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't want to go back and repeat our last broadcast, but that's what I'm looking forward to in May when they start shipping that, and in GTC later on in March. I expect we'll hear more about it.
Oh yeah, definitely, and I think this was a really. It was an interesting earnings report to go into with GTC with obviously the outlook that they provided is very, very positive. But yeah, I don't think the DeepSeek thing has been factored in yet. I mean, this is from a quarter ago. I mean, DeepSeek, believe it or not, only happened a month ago,
3 weeks ago,
a month ago, right?
Yeah.
I think people are still figuring it out. We hear a lot of talk about R1, and there's a few things that he said that didn't kind of reconcile with what I'm saying. Number one, a lot of the rhetoric around distillation, how that's really bringing the cost of post-training down. So, I think there's conflicting narratives there, where I think he's thinking there's going to be more compute required for distillation, but then we're hearing about folks who are distilling models at single, double digit figures, right? $20, $30, $250. So how does that square with what he's assuming? And that might be one of the interesting things that we investigate or talk about and speak to the NVIDIA folks about, is how is post-training shifting. And I think a lot of folks aren't putting enough attention to what happened with V3. There are still a lot of questions that are not answered about V3. R1 is pretty well known because they did they published a lot of transparent and, quite frankly, replicable methods in that particular white paper. But if you look at V3, there's still a lot of unknowns that people have not addressed. And I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be to figure out how do they pre-train this model where it had this ridiculous sparsity, right? Basically it's 10 times more efficient than a llama model. At least that's what I've read in the research I've done. So, you really still have to look at V3 and what are the implications on pre-training, and how is it that they were able to sit there and take this MOE and get to that, the level of sparsity where it's just incredibly efficient. And, a friend of mine at Intel sent me a study that a team at Intel is doing exactly on that, is the efficiency of the token routing within the V3 MOE architecture, and they're examining how is it that this model can be so efficient, orders of magnitude more efficient than anything else. And so I don't think I have not read a good treatment of this problem other than that paper, and it's only the first step in this investigation, or what I would consider the first step in an investigation that pretty much I don't think anyone has done. And so I think that they're on step one, and there's still about 5 or 6 steps before you really have a sense of what it is that DeepSeek and, quite frankly, the Chinese model builders have done, because they didn't just take stock, NVIDIA stock open source stuff and then implement to build this model. And there's this misconception that they somehow just, copied or used, post-trained on top of a llama model. That's not true. They used the llama architecture, something similar, and they tweaked the crap out of it. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, okay, they even had they even designed and built their own tokenizer. So there are all these things that have not been addressed or not known. Yet we have people out there saying that this is a nothing burger. And it's like, well, if you haven't asked these questions, you haven't gone down these paths to investigate what these guys did, how do you know what the implications are on the market? Because the economics they're introducing, even with R1, are it's disruptive, right? So I think there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered, but we'll see. I think this is going to play out over the course of the next 2 quarters, and we won't see, the impacts of it for a while. But
I think you're right. I also noticed Alibaba announced a text to video equivalent this morning.
Really?
Using same kind of distillation techniques.
Yeah.
So, I think it's going to be pervasive. I think it's going to help a lot of people that couldn't afford to use AI. It's going to allow them to use AI. The question is, where's that balance point, right?
Yeah.
Devon's paradox is a general thing. It doesn't mean it's, if you cut the price by 2, the number of units increases by 2. It doesn't mean that.
Yeah.
It's a general trend observation.
Yeah, and then and definitely NVIDIA, or at least Jensen, probably all of NVIDIA, if it's Jensen, they're really banking on this whole inference time scaling. He cited the 3 scaling observations. They're not laws, observations, and that as being one of them. And how that really plays out and factors into the economics, I think, is going to be important, right? Especially
I think
the token prices are continue to collapse, which is different from costs.
Yes,
it's different
absolutely.
from costs, and people get that confused.
Yeah,
right.
No, I think we will definitely see data center growth, AI training growth slow down. There's no question in my mind. Slow down. The question I have is, well, okay, how fast is Jensen going to ramp up things like physical AI, agentic AI, and AI PCs? How fast will that ramp up?
Yeah,
Will that be able to take the place of the phenomenal growth they've enjoyed for data center training? So I know where that balance point will be. But I agree. I think we will know a lot more in the next 2 quarters as we see this begin to play out.
Yeah. But already that outlook, the 43 billion is an indication that a lot of the stuff is already baked in. Like he mentioned, good visibility of the pipeline. But then, one of the things that, as you know, Karl, I'm always looking at the end markets and that situation. I think that's those are factors that sometimes are not well, let's say, treated in the AI discourse, especially the supercomputing discourse. But I think people do need to consider that when you listen on the Microsoft call, Satya will say, look, the data center build outs, that can be depreciated over a long period of time. Those are investments that we can make, or the expenses will be spread over a decade or 15 years or so. But we're going to be flexible, and we'll build out the compute part, right? Based on demand. And so I think as we look at the investments going into the data center, these not all parts are fixed, and not all things are prioritized in the same way, right? And I think when you look at it from a risk perspective, the likes of Microsoft, Google, and others are going to be probably adopting a similar kind of strategy in terms of how they manage the risk going forward. Because there's always risk. It's just a matter of, well, what's your mitigation, or what sort of controls are you going to put in place to respond to the either unexpected or the inevitable. So
yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, but I really think you hit the nail on the head with these other parts of their business, which I think outside of gaming, and gaming kind of took I think they took a 20% plus quarter on quarter decline, or that's what they racked up. But professional visualization, I think, was up. Wasn't it like 16%?
It's a relatively small market, though. I think the one that caught my attention was automotive. Automotive started to grow again. Their automotive has been fairly stagnant, and I don't think you can pin all that on Toyota. They haven't even shipped those vehicles yet that are using NVIDIA technology, so it's not from Toyota. So that was interesting to see, because I haven't written them off for auto, but I think Qualcomm has a much stronger position and much lower costs. And a very good customer list that is deploying on Snapdragon today. So that was a bit of a surprise to me to see the automotive grow so well.
Yeah,
we'll see if it's sustainable.
Yeah, exactly. But then I think it is; those are the segments that we need to keep an eye out on, especially as you mentioned, things shift away from like the large data center training toward inference. But I do think that there's still going to be a lot of training. It might be confederated, like across the edge. It's going to be a different variety of training, probably more of the post fine-tuning type of stuff. That's like the whole life cycle of the AI application or the model itself, because those things need to be maintained, right?
Right.
It'll probably those segments will be a leading indicator of what how their business from the data center it diffuses as the AI workloads start to spread across the edge, I suppose, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I also noticed IBM launched another wave of Granite models.
Really?
Fleshing out. Yeah. They kind of. It's just every month or 2 months they come out with a whole new wave of new Granite models. The IBM clients can take advantage of. Anybody can take advantage of that are more efficient and more advanced models.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be even more models now that everyone's kind of jumping on this distillation bandwagon, right? They've discovered distillation, but ultimately, I think the benefit is going to be, the opportunities outside of the large data centers, especially as these more robust model capabilities can now be brought down into a smaller, model footprint, and then deployed even on a AI PC, for instance, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, the edge is getting more capable, which is kind of cool, and it's sort of democratizing the data center capabilities across these different edge environments. So I think that's probably one of the big pluses. And so, and can you believe it's only just been a month right? It's just the month of February. I'm almost afraid.
And GTC around the corner.
Yeah, so. I know. And then we have GTC in March. And so, what else? Anything else stand out for you on the call?
No, I think that
everything.
I kind of covered it. Yeah. I'm like, I don't know. I can't think of anything else.
Yeah, the only other thing that I can think about is like when Jensen says that the useful life of these systems are, that they build, whether it's in the data center or, some of the older GPU, systems based on older GPUs. He mentions the fungibility. I think that you have to kind of reconcile that with the one year cadence, right? Because if you're like, what is it, doubling the performance? Is it every year, or it's more than double, right?
Yeah, I don't know if they've said. I haven't seen them say whether it's doubling or tripling or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think he was asked that question on a call, and his response was, "Hey, look, it's just another Blackwell with more memory and better networking."
Yeah, that's
he did say improved compute cores, something to that effect, which I'm not sure how valid that is. We'll have to wait and see. We'll probably hear a lot more in about 3 weeks.
I know.
GTC.
Yeah. So everyone, yeah.
But I think you're right. I think the annual cadence is going to be hard, I think, for the industry to digest.
Yeah.
And it may be possible that they'll just I don't know what people will do. If you got 2 generations of Blackwell that are just ramping within 6 months of each other.
Yeah.
I think it's really up to NVIDIA to correctly position each of these platforms for specific use cases and models.
Yeah.
And maybe maybe Blackwell becomes more of an inference platform, and Ultra becomes the training. I don't know. I'm just guessing, but something along those lines. You got to have a lead dog in the race, and you can't have 2 lead dogs. Well, you could,
but you're
competing with yourself.
It's interesting.
And it's hard to forecast.
Yeah. But then, it is interesting because we may be at an inflection point, because even based on some of the things that we've cited just in the last 20 minutes or so, they're sort of countervailing or contradictory trends.
Yeah.
I think there's some friction forming, right? Whether it's the what I call, sort of the token dumping dynamic, where prices are collapsing for tokens. The end market where monetization is still a problem. I just got off of a whole series of calls this week. And real monetization is really nowhere in sight. It's actually kind of disturbing. And then you have these the economics of supercomputing that may be impacted by what DeepSeek V3 did.
Mm-hmm.
And so how that plays out, we still have to see. But if there was ever a really interesting time in this whole cycle that we've been witnessing with generative AI, this is probably the most interesting time right now.
Yeah.
Hang
on tight. There's more to come.
I know. GTC is going to be crazy. So, any other last thoughts?
No, I think we pretty much covered the waterfront. My voice is giving out. So
yeah, I know. And Daisy took off, so that means that
Daisy took off. I mean, something's going on in the house.
Yeah, I know. It must be dinner time. So yeah, with that, hey Karl, thanks a lot. Thanks,
pleasure.
Appreciate you sharing, and before we take off, remember to like, share, and subscribe to the Next Curve YouTube channel, and also follow our research at www.next-curve.com. Also, follow Karl Freund's research at Cambrian-AI research at Cambrian-AI.com.
Yeah. Cambrian-AI.com. Yeah.
Yeah. Stay tuned and check us out for the tech and industry insights in the semiconductor industry and all this AI stuff that matters. And we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.
Take care.